Okay, today we are going to talk about hand tools, and this is the second chapter in the Carpentry 1 curriculum that you should be working on. Today we're going to be dealing with things like hand saws, planes, hammers, chisels. You have several projects that I'm going to ask you to do, and I'm going to demonstrate each one of these projects for you right now. First, you should have received back two pieces of wood. These were cut off of your former project. You can see all your markings from the measuring marking. You're going to take these two projects and you're going to turn these into one. First thing we need to do is we're going to put one of these off to the side, and we are going to take one of the boards, and I want you to measure 2 inches in. Okay, so while we're talking right now, I'm going to do that. I'm starting this on the 10-inch mark, and I'm going to mark it at the 12, and I'm going to put a square line. Okay, so this is the line that we're going to use to guide us as we cut. Now we're going to talk about our hand saws a little bit. I'm going to put 2 hand saws here, and both of these saws are used for cutting wood, except they have 2 different purposes. Now I'm going to put these up a little closer to the camera, and I want you to take a look at the teeth that are on these saws. This saw, the teeth are right here. You can see that this saw has a lot smaller teeth than this saw. This saw has bigger teeth. The difference in these two is the smaller teeth are designed to go across the board. The larger teeth are designed to go with the board. We call this a rip cut. So when you're cutting with the length of the board, that's a rip. When you're cutting across the grain, and the grain is the little line in the wood. When you're cutting across the grain, that's called a cross cut, and we would use the smaller teeth. The smaller they are and the more they are, the more teeth, the finer and better cut you're going to get. Okay, so we're going to choose our cross cut saw. We're going to put our rip saw out of the way. And for purposes of this demo, I'm going to set this up here so I am not cutting on my table. Okay, you want to have your line off the side of your table, and you're going to take your saw and use your finger. It's not going to hurt. Use your finger as a guide. We're going to put it right on the line. You can see I have my line right there. Put it on the line, and notice my saw is on the waist side. So this is our waist side. This is the side we want to keep. I don't want to cut my line off. I still want to see my line when it's done. And I'm just going to pull back a couple of times to give me a start. Then once I get started, I'm just going to go back and forth in a good, consistent, straight motion, making sure I don't want my saw to be tipping in either direction. And I want to give it just good, even strokes. Try to use the whole saw if possible. So if I'm only going like this, I'm doing a lot more work than I need to be doing. Occasionally the teeth catch. You need to hold on to it real tight. So we're going to get close to the end, and I slowed down, and I have my 2 cuts. As you can see, I can still see my line on there. That means I have a good accurate cut. If you can't see your line, there's a chance that your piece is too short. Okay? All right. So that's our cross cut. Move this back out of the way. You're done with your saw at this point. All right, so we have these 2 pieces now. What I'm going to ask is that the piece that you just cut off is probably going to be a little bit crooked. And that's the good point about still having that line on there. If you cut your line off, I need you to get your square and put it back on here and redraw a line on there for me. Because now what we're going to do is we're going to take this and put it in a clamp. And we're going to use a hand screw clamp, often referred to as a wood clamp in this class. And I'm going to move this camera over just a little bit so we can see a little bit better and I can get a better angle. Okay. So what you're seeing is I got that clamped in there really good. Now I'm going to take a secondary clamp and I'm going to clamp this down to the table nice and tight. Okay, I don't want it to move. I'm going to make sure that this is nice and tight. I don't want this to wiggle or move at all. Then I'm going to get my block plane, and this is the block plane. And our block plane works something like this. This lever right here loosens all these mechanisms. If it's a little bit tight, it's better. This mechanism right here moves in and out our blade, which is right here. We don't want the blade sticking out very far. We barely want it to grab. Okay, so as I get it close, I'm going to start locking this down. The other thing is I don't want my blade crooked or at an angle, and that's what this little thing controls right here. That controls the angle of our blade. So I'm going to make sure my blade is straight the way I want it. And then I'm going to adjust it so it's barely sticking out. And the way I'm going to test that is as I go right here on this, if it catches, okay, we're seeing it catch quite a bit, then that's not really working for us. So we need to back it off just a little bit more. About right there. Okay, now, the next thing that I'm doing and that you're going to see me do, gotta tighten this up just a little bit more, it's moving on me, is as I do this, I'm only going to go part way. If I go all the way through the board, it tends to break off the back part of the board. So, well, thought I had it tight. We'll get there. Okay, I'm just going to keep working on it, and then I'm going to come from the other side. Okay, and what I'm doing is I'm flattening this out. Now here again, I don't want my plane tilted to one side or the other. I want it nice and flat, so as I go across, it's taking small shavings. And if you look in here, you can see the very fine small shavings. And I'm just going to keep over and over until I flatten that out and I get right to my line and I'm really close. I'm going to go back this way a little bit. Okay. Now, if everything's done right, you should have a nice clean line. You should be right to your line, and this should be nice and smooth and flat. All right. So next, we want to take and make sure we have a good, flat, smooth side. So I want to set this, I want to set my combination square at about 1/16 of an inch, which isn't very much. And we're going to scribe a parallel line. Remember we did that in the other section, in the measuring? We're going to scribe a parallel line right down the edge. And this is a little tough to do because there's not a whole lot here. Okay, so I have my parallel line right there. I'm going to put that in my clamp here and clamp it down nice and tight. Now, we're going with the grain this time. When we were doing the end grain, we're kind of going against the grain, so it's very hard. We can put a little more blade out this time. So I'm going to move the blade down just a little bit. And I want to go good, clean strokes all the way across. You can see that's removing a much bigger chip. Okay, and what I want to do is take it right down to that line. So you can see I got a little bit more. I'm getting really close right here. So I may turn my board around. That means I'm doing a good job taking it off the front, but I'm not doing a good job taking it off the rest of the way. And a lot of that's because I got a knot. Got a special. So I'm just going to move it back. So I'm kind of starting in the middle of the board now. Okay, I'm pretty much down to my line all the way across. Got a nice smooth edge. That's what I want, and it's pretty much flat and square. Okay? So that's how you would use your block plane. So that's 2 of your that's 3 of your assignments that are done to that point. All right. We're gonna now show you how to put in a mortise for like if you wanted to put a hinge into a door frame. And we're going to start by choosing a side of our wood. I would really recommend avoiding places like this. This is a knot, and it's one of the hardest places on the board. So I'm going to come over here to this side. I also want to avoid doing the end, because if you get too close to the end, it breaks off real easy. So I'm going to come in about right here, and I'm going to use a line that's already there. And I'm going to set up my hinge about where I want it. And I'm going to trace it out. Okay, so I have it traced out. This is the area that I'm going to get rid of. Now we're going to use a chisel and a hammer to do this. But before we do that, we need to gauge the thickness. And I'm going to use my combination square. And I'm going to set this so it's at about the same thickness as my hinge. Then if I just take the side of the board right here where I marked, right here on the side, and I scribe a line, I know how deep I need to go. All right. Now I'm gonna grab my hand or my clamps back over here, because I'm going to find that if I can hold this a little bit more, I have a little bit better stability. So I'm just going to kind of put my clamp on this end just to kind of help hold it for me. You want a good, strong, flat surface. Okay, now with your chisel, you have a flat side and then you have a beveled side right here. We're going to go around and we're going to score the whole edge of this so that we have a line and we know how deep to take it. I want to put my flat side against that and my beveled side to the inside. And I'm just going to give it a good tap. I'm going to move it over and I'm going to do the same thing. Now for this purpose, we have a round hinge here, but for this purpose, I'm going to allow you to square it out. We're going to go to the other side and we're going to do the same thing. Good solid tap. Then we're going to come down the back side of it. I don't want you to hit this as hard because we're going with the grain, and so it's very easy to split. Okay, now it's just real simple. We're going to take the bevel side down and we're going to start taking out little chunks at a time. And I hope I can hold this where you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to have to find a way to clamp this. Okay. See, I'm just taking out little tiny chunks at a time. And the cool thing about a chisel is if you bring it up, you go deeper. If you go down, you go shallow. So if you start going too deep, all you got to do is drop your handle. And control it. I'm just going to keep going right on down. Okay, and I can also go the other way if the grain will allow it. And when I get to that piece that where I had downward hitting, it just kind of takes it right off. Okay, so there's my first course. Now, as I show you, I still got a ways to get to my line. So I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep just going a little bit at a time. And a little bit at a time until it gets all the way down to where I want. So I'm going to score this again. Just go a little bit deeper. And then I'm just going to go a little deeper this way. Here again, a little bit at a time. Turn around and go this way. So that's 2 courses. You want to fill this, see if you're high, like I'm high right here. So I can take and maybe another layer off right here. Okay, so we're going to go down one more time. Before I do that, I want to just put this hinge in here. Is everything fitting right? It looks like it is, but as I fill, my hinge is just a little bit higher than the wood. We want it to be even, so we're going to go one more time with that. If you have a good sharp chisel, you can always come back and clean up a little bit on your own. The only thing that I would really recommend is that you don't be holding like this and go like this. You can slip and gouge that, and there are some stitches waiting for you if that happens. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of clean up a little bit. I'm going to put my hinge back in there. Right now, right here, my hinge fits perfect. But over here, it's a little high. So somewhere in here, I have a hump and I can feel it. It's right here. So I'm just going to go down a little bit more right here. Put this in. Now I got a good clean fill all the way around. Show that to your instructor. Let him check off on it. He'll tell you if you're too deep, too high. If you mess up right here, you can always try right here. If you mess up there, turn your board over and do it again. You can have 4 or 8 chances to get this right. Okay, so that's setting a mortise using your chisel and hammer. Okay, you have 2 basic more activities that I need you to do. and they're relatively simple. If I can find all my pieces. All right. So what I'm going to ask you to do is get the shorter piece, and I want you to scribe me a line that is half the thickness of this. So here's how we're going to do this. We need to figure out how wide is this board. So as I measure the thickness, how thick is this board? As I measure that thickness, I find out that I have 3/4 of an inch. So if I set my combination square to half of 3/4, which I happen to know is 3/8. So I'm going to set that to 3/8. And then I'm going to scribe a line on here at 3/8 of an inch. And the reason why I'm doing that is so we're going to nail these two pieces together. That way when I nail, I know that the nail is going to go right in the middle and not come out the sides. All right, next thing I want is I want you to come in 1 inch from each end. And then I want you to divide what we have left. So I have 8 inches left. I'm starting on the 2 and I have 10. So 10 minus 2 is 8. 8 divided by 3 is going to be about 2 3/8. Let's give that a shot. 2 3/8 would be right there. 2 3/8 would be about right there. No. Let's try 2 5/8. 2 5/8. 2 5/8, and now I have 2 5/8. So it's about 2 5/8. I just want to put some crosshairs on there. So I want these nails evenly spaced is what I'm asking you to do. Your boards may be different size, so you need to make sure that they're equally spaced. And what that means is from here to here is the same distance to there and the same distance to there. Then what I'm going to do is get me some 4-penny nails. If I can get them, I'll show you. 4-penny nails, and 4-penny really refers to the length, but in old times it's how many nails you could buy for a penny. So the bigger the nail, the heavier they are, the less nails you get, and the smaller they are, the less they weigh and the more you get. So that's where it came from. So I'm going to start every nail. I'm going to put it right on my mark, and I'm going to keep it straight up and down. And I'm going to hold my fingers down towards the bottom. This is where you're going to hit your fingers if you're going to hit them, so you just want to do some light taps. Get it started, make sure they're as straight up and down as you can. Okay, now I'm just going to put these in a little bit more so I don't have so much work to do. If you don't hit them straight on the head, you're going to bend them like I almost did. All right. Now you're going to take your other piece of wood, and I want one end even right here, and I want this edge even. Really, all you need to do is worry about right where your nail is. So I'm not going to worry about over here. I'm just going to worry about this. I'm even and I'm even. I'm going to try to drive a few more nails, or drive it in deeper. And I'm going to stop it right there. So now I come to this one, get that about even. Drive that nail. I'm going to get this one even. Drive that one. Drive that one. You should have 4 nails. They should have gone in straight. They shouldn't have come out the side here or come out the side there. After that's done, you got one more task. And I'm just, to help me hold this, I'm just going to kind of put this in my clamp. I don't need it tight. But we are going to use what is called a nail set. And a nail set does nothing more than push set the wood down below the surface so we can come back with a wood filler and fill it, sand it down, and you never know that there's a nail there. So I'm going to set the nail right on top of the nail set right on top of the nail. and I'm going to give it a good solid strike. If it doesn't go down far enough, do it again. Okay, you want it to go in enough that you can feel it, but you don't want to put it in really deep. Okay. That was good. I'm going to turn this around. Okay. So I have my 2-inch piece that I cut off. We then took the piece where I cut, and I took my block plane and we smoothed it out. Then we took the block plane and we smoothed the edge, got it nice and straight. I cut out for my mortise. I hammered 4 nails equally spaced, and I set those 4 nails. Once you're done with this, you need to turn this into your instructor so he can grade it, and make sure you do your review. You should have a chapter review with some questions. Make sure you highlight those questions and turn those back in through your computer, and you will be ready to move on to the next chapter when that is done. That is all for hand tools.